Well, there are a lot of scenarios I can give you. For example, someone is a songwriter and they've approached a publisher, and a publisher has sent them a contract, whether it be a single song contract, which is just for one individual musical composition, or whether it be an exclusive songwriting agreement, which is essentially an employment agreement for a songwriter in which he is paid a salary by the publishing company and writes a certain number of songs per year for the publishing company. He might come to me and say, hey, I've got this agreement, what do I do with it? And then I take it from there. I sit down with him, I talk about what the contract is demanding from him. Usually that would be the copyright in the song, and in the case of an exclusive songwriting agreement, a minimum number of compositions per year, usually 12 to 15. And I explain those factors to him and I say, this is what it says, is there anything we should ask for? And then we go back and forth between the publisher's attorney and myself, and we hammer out the terms of the agreement so that it meets the meeting of the minds that's between the publisher and the songwriter. That's one example. Another example might be where an artist has received a recording agreement from a Sony or an EMI or one of the major four recording companies, and seeks counsel as to the meaning of that agreement, or seeks a better deal, or wants us to negotiate better terms. Those are things we might do for an entertainer or an artist. Other things we might do, for example, is if someone comes to us and says, hey, I want to start a publishing company. How do I do that? Well, then we walk them through the steps. We set up a corporation or an LLC or some business entity that meets their needs, and then we take them through the steps of registering with a BMI and a CSAC and an ASCAP and get them qualified as a publisher. I also am a litigator, which means I represent clients in court. So if a client has written a song and someone is claiming that he stole the song from them, that would be copyright infringement. That person would come to me, either person would come to me and say, hey, I'm being sued for copyright infringement, I want you to defend me, or I feel like someone's infringed my song, will you go sue them? And there are different steps, of course, in defending a case as opposed to prosecuting a case, but I handle both aspects. We handle both aspects of that litigation. For example, if someone asks us to represent them in a copyright infringement case against the songwriter, the very first thing we would do is we would tell them that we need to get a musicologist, which is essentially an expert in music. Someone who would take the two musical compositions, compare them, and say, yes, in fact, this song does copy this one substantially. And then that person would give us a report, and we would review it with our client and determine whether or not to take the case. And it all hinges upon whether or not we can get an expert to say, yes, in fact, there is infringement, and whether or not there actually is infringement. So that would be the factors that would help us determine whether to take that case. Other instances of when a client might come to us would involve things of revolving around the internet, for example. A lot of our clients have high-profile names, and they want to protect those names. Now this gets into not only domain name disputes, but trademark disputes. We are involved in protecting that person's identity. And you do that through the trademark, either state or federal registration, and you do that through the protection of domain names. And we are involved in a number of disputes over domain names. We have handled a number of those for various clients and successfully regained some names, and we've lost a few. So that's another aspect of the practice. You can go on the internet and Google, for example, record contract, and you'll get probably hundreds of forms. And certainly you can use those. Nobody's saying you can't, and there's perfectly valid agreements if both parties sign, but the thing about those agreements is they've been put out there as forms. They're not specifically tailored for your needs. There are hundreds, literally hundreds of terms in a recording agreement, for example. There are recording commitments, there are charge-offs, and each of those terms can be uniquely tailored to the needs of the two parties. These days, there are more independent record labels out there than there are major labels. And the independent labels are forging ahead with new ways of doing business. And therefore, it's difficult to rely on form documents that were created back when the major labels were controlling the business. That's not the case anymore. The music industry has changed so much in my 15 years of practicing as an entertainment attorney. It's incredible. And right now, the power is shifting dramatically away from the major labels and into the hands of the independents. So it's more and more important for independent record labels to seek out someone like myself, an entertainment attorney, who can help them establish their business, form the proper business entity, find the proper agreement, and tailor it to their specific needs and to their unique way of doing business. A lot of companies now don't charge royalties like they did in the past. A lot of companies are forming joint ventures with artists, 50-50 ventures, where both parties own the sound recordings, both parties share in the net proceeds. So it's a unique structure. You don't see that with the major labels. They're confined to their own system, which in the past has relied on radio stations and airplay to promote their product. With the advent of the internet and the advent of downloading and what we're seeing that is happening with iTunes, with podcasting, with blogs, with Google, with eBay, and on and on and on, the power is going back to the hands of the people, and that changes the way we do business. And as a result, it means you need entertainment attorneys more than ever, in my opinion. Once again, this is Barry Shrum, and thanks for watching DigiMusic TV.